Thanks all for coming here to the shortest talk of the day. I'm very happy to be here. Obviously, I've only got 10 minutes, so I will go through this quickly. Happy to chat afterwards though. So, cloud design is a story. What do I mean by that? What is the difference, well, what are the similarities between design and a story? Well, before we get into the details, the author blurb. Every book has it. This has it. I have it too. I'm a dad with 2 young children. Whenever I have time, they let me work. All I do all day long basically is AWS related. Don't worry, I will use it as examples, but it's not related to this. I'm not going to be technical, any of that. Instead, we'll focus on story. But what is a story? A story has ingredients. We have our setting, which is the world we live in. Or rather, the world our protagonist lives in, our hero. We have an antagonist as well, which is the bad guy, our villain. We have our other characters, side characters, maybe the hero's best friend, or the little girl who got kidnapped by the villain. And challenges. Challenges need to be overcome. You can't have a story without challenges. Otherwise, it's really, really boring. So, as I said, going through this quickly, let's start with our hero. Staring into the sunrise, well, noonday. Basically, when you think of cloud design, what would be our hero? Usually, be more interactive about it, but our hero is the application. The thing that, without it, what would be the point? We need something to deliver. Now, our protagonist, our hero, in a story, we want to know where are they from, what do they look like, what do they like, what is their history. The cloud design, what architecture will it run on, what language, what dependencies, deployment methods, all that stuff. So a lot more questions, and luckily I don't have to go into them because Sonia did a much better explanation of those than I did. But the main question, obviously, when it comes to a story is what is the motivation? What is the purpose of our application? If we don't know that, how do we know what to build? And it's all of these questions, these high-level questions, that then can give us the more technical answers. Again, this was done into much more detail this morning. So, technical details are more like, what do we run on? Is it serverless, containers, instances, all that stuff. But aside from our protagonist, we have the world we live in. I can tell you data centers don't look like this. Would be nice, but they're not quite as fun. But the main question here is, what is the broader landscape? So, what do we care about? We need to, our applications don't live in isolation. If they did, there wouldn't be much point to them. But it's not just in isolation. The other thing that you have is where do they live? So in this example, a VPC, don't worry if you're not familiar with it, but we have our application running in there, our databases, ways to connect to the outside world. And that is the little thing where our hero lives. But the hero is not alone, necessarily. There could be other things in that VPC. And that VPC is in what would be called a region, which is a geographical location. But you can have multiple VPCs in that region. And that region is part of an AWS account. You can use multiple regions within that account. And all of that together works together. And then that VPC, or the account, is part of a bigger structure that you may need to be aware of. You may have other accounts that take care of things like backups or centralized egress points. And all of this then means you need to be aware of the other characters. So we have our side characters. Basically, the main question here that you want to know is who and what do we talk to? Yes, you want to talk to the consumers of your application, but maybe there's also an API that you have to call, or your systems need to have regulatory requirements like an IPS system, intrusion detection, things like that. And there's a lot of interaction with other systems, and you will always have that. You need to know what that is to be able to make a good design. And these are all the fun things. And then we have our black hat, our villain of the story. In a story, you usually, unless it's a mystery, you're aware of who the villain is. When you build for the cloud, you don't necessarily know who that's going to be. Will your villain be a script kiddie? Will it be somebody who wants to use your systems to run the Bitcoin mining? Or will it be a state-sponsored organization that just wants all the things? So what the important thing here is that you know what you need to protect. Do you have a system that is running 24/7, but if it goes down for 5 minutes, your company will lose $10 million? Do you have a database full of personally identifiable information that would be super valuable for anyone to share with the world? Well, not with the world without paying for it, but to share. We've all heard the stories over the past few years of companies that haven't quite managed to secure all their things, which is why it's so very important. And you may notice most of the things I'm talking about is the questions that you have to ask to turn something into a story. And then the last part is the challenges. When you build for the cloud, you may not need to face a volcano to find out what you need to build. But I can tell you, if instead you have to deal with PCI DSS compliance, sometimes that volcano might actually look very appetizing. It might be something you'd want. Or you can also have internal challenges. Maybe there's a lot of red tape in the company you work with or company you work for. And what you do there is, what that means is that you can only do deployments once every 2 months. So you have to make sure that everything is completely in order before you miss that window and have to wait another 2 months. These are the kind of challenges that you can reach into, that you can have to meet here for your story. So, as I said, these are the ingredients of a story, but the story is not just its ingredients. You have to tell the right story. And another thing, one quote that is very applicable also to any design, but in writing you must kill all your darlings. If you spend weeks working on something, say the 3 options that Sonia mentioned this morning, you have your preferred options. It's beautiful. You spend 3-4 weeks, well, I don't know how many weeks, working on it, getting all the details right, beautiful, and it's actually not useful in the end. You have to go for another option. Don't be afraid to do that. The options are there, but it doesn't mean you always have to take them. Killing your darlings, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had to do so, is just part of the process. But now we've got all the ingredients of a story, we've killed all the things we actually like, but they don't fit. We call our story complete. Yes, it's done. If you write a book or a movie or a story like that, this is the point where you're done, unless maybe you're George Lucas. Then you mess it up. But when you come to cloud design, you have to keep up to date. Services you use may get deprecated. Frameworks that your application uses may get old and stale, or you have to integrate with other things. So this is the thing where your work is never done. But it's okay, because in the same time, you're never alone with this. To get all the answers earlier, you've been talking to people. You will keep talking to people. And in the end, you have a team. Maybe you don't talk to them every day or every week, but you know who to go to for answers. And together, you build a beautiful story. And after you've done that, you can start all over again for the sequel. Because work is never done. The fun part here with the sequels, of course, is you get to do a new thing with all the learnings from the old. There will be no exact match to what you've done before. That would actually not be very interesting. And that's where it goes. As I said, only had 10 minutes, so I kept it brief. The end credits, you can find me there. On my website, ignore me. There will be a written version of this talk that's longer and in more detail. But I want to thank you all for coming, and I'd love to have a chat later with any of you.